day long. I felt like smashing my face in a clear glass window. But instead, I went out and smashed up a phone box round the corner.
Holsworthy. Stella.
Oh, good evening.
Stella.
Yes. I've been listening to some different ideas from people, and you keep going on and on about these 2 million jobs that we have vacancies, but we can't take in these Eastern European people. But what is the figure of the people that we have on job seekers allowance?
Job seekers allowance is, I do actually have those figures. Wait a minute. I don't have them to hand. If you give me a while, I can get them for you. It's not that many.
Yeah. So, but at the end of the day, for these people to get that money, they should be able to say to them, well, yeah, we need that field over there, needs all the potatoes picking and all the strawberries or the grapes or whatever all need to be picked. And you have to do this. If you don't do this, then your money will be sanctioned, because you do have several people that are sitting at home doing sweet nothing and just raking in the money.
Yeah.
And then they're screaming, oh, you know...
Job seekers allowance. Here it is, 264,000.
So we've got 264,000 people on job seekers allowance.
Yeah, but 2 million jobs in want of doing.
And 2 million jobs.
Yeah.
Well, that takes off quite, almost a quarter. And at the end of the day, as we say, we have a crisis in this country. I mean, I live in a village where they've built another 10 bungalows up the road. There's another 20 houses going up in Holsworthy, all in different places. And at the end of the day, there's no structure to this.
Structure? What do you mean?
Infrastructure, sorry, the word. It was infrastructure.
Yeah.
Like where
you should blame the government for that.
Well,
it's specifically their fault.
It's everything. I mean, we as an island, we're only tiny, and we have about 65 million people coming into this, who are living in this country.
Yeah.
We've got all the people on the streets. I've had a friend who's actually been living in a tent for the past 10 days.
Right, well, you can blame the government for that, for dragging its feet on building houses, because I suspect people such as yourself will object to people building houses near where you live.
Well, they're building
which you just kind of have done.
Yeah, which they have. They've built properties, and you try and get an appointment with a doctor. Well, you can't now, because it's such a long waiting list.
Right. Well, you should blame the government for that too.
Yeah, this is all of the government's problems, and it doesn't matter actually who we vote in, and they say they're going to do this, they're going to do that. Okay, with the Brexit, obviously I voted
but it does.
out.
Well, that's what I would imagine. And how's that working out for you?
Well, I can't see. I mean, when Boris's last words were, he helped to get us out of the EU. He hasn't got us out of the EU. Ask the fishermen and people
he's got us out of the EU, all right, but he hasn't got Brexit done. And neither have they delivered any of the promises that made people such as yourself vote to leave in the first place. So all of that was just a tower of lies. And as for job seekers allowance, I mean, you did mention that. The last figures I've got, 264,000 people on job seekers allowance, which means they are actually seeking jobs. Now, some of the jobs that are in want of being done are not anywhere near where these people live. Some of them are only 2-3 months during the summer when the picking season is on. You can't expect somebody to leave like Manchester, for instance, and then go to Cornwall for 2 months to pick I don't know what they grow in Cornwall, strawberries, let's say, and then go back home, because how are they going to manage to do that? See, British people don't and can't, and in many cases can't do these jobs because they aren't where they live. And we don't have a pool of long-term unemployed as well. I mean, 264,000, it's not that 264,000 people have been doing nothing for years. There's a churn in there. People seek jobs, they find jobs, and then other people lose their jobs. So this idea that we've got a giant pool of idle layabouts who should be put to work in the fields is just not true. It won't work. And that's why we have relied, relatively lately, on those coming from abroad who are more desperate than we are, for whom the money that is being, the sort of pittance that is being offered to do these jobs is a big deal. And it's partly because people from abroad came to do those jobs that we have been enjoying relatively low prices on the things that we depend on, like food, for instance. Food, very, very cheap in this country. I mean, I know it's gone up just lately, but that's different. We have the price of filling a basket of food in the supermarket is incredibly cheap if you think about what actually goes into putting that food on the shelves. And it's partly because of the people who are employed to put it there are paid very small amounts of money. That's what we as a country have been enjoying off their backs. Peckham, hello, Lanny.
Oh, hello, Nick.
Lanny.
I've been listening to your show for a while now, Nick, and I can tell you it's an amazing show. I love it.
Amazing? What, like science fiction?
I was going to say, I've been waiting to speak to you for a while now. Can you ask Zayford how long I've been waiting for, please?
You've been waiting for, is it like 1 minute?
And 1.
2 minutes?
Yeah, 2.
More than that?
6 million.
6 million minutes.
Oh, okay, Nick. I'm not very happy with you, you know. You make me do homework all week long because I'm thinking about material, which I can call you over the weekend.
Right.
So can I be a listener with material?
Well, okay then.
Nick, I like your Scottish and Irish accent. Can you do it again, please? And I've not heard your African accent yet.
Yeah, let me think about that, Lani. No, go ahead.
And
time's running out.
Do you know why the Conservative Party has been getting it wrong for the past 12 years?
Do I know that they've been getting it wrong for the past 2 years?
Do you know why they've been getting it wrong?
Oh, do I know why they've been getting it wrong for the last 12 years? I'm not sure they actually have been getting it wrong. It very much depends on the definition of the word it.
Well, it's because they've been hot. So I think if we put all of them in a bath and use a hose pipe on them, it's going to cool them down and they might start. Okay,
you know at the beginning when I said it might be okay if you were a listener with material, I've had a rethink.
No.
I mean, you could set your watch by it. How predictable is this? The Bank of England has backed a crazy Kwarteng's plan to scrap the cap on bankers' bonuses. The Bank of England did. Yeah, I bet they did. Ministers are plotting a bonfire of red tape dubbed Big Bang 2.0. And, considering that the Big Bang 1.0 led directly to the frenzy of dodgy and dangerous deals to maximise bonuses that led to the financial crash of 2007, which we will be paying for the rest of our lives, what could possibly go wrong with Big Bang 2.0? But it's okay that the government says there's nothing to worry about. Threadneedle Street said it had never supported the cap. Well, of course they hadn't. They're bankers. The bankers' cap was imposed before Brexit, and Threadneedle Street added, that's the whole street, that there are more effective measures to stop excessive risk-taking by bankers. Well, you know what? There aren't. If you take the stupidly massive reward away from stupidly crazy behaviour, then the behaviour stops. If you cap the amount of money that they can earn by making berserk bets, they'll stop making those bets. But what Threadneedle Street, the whole road apparently, What they meant, I would expect, when they said that more effective measures are available to stop excessive risk-taking by bankers, what they probably meant is good oversight and regulations, which the government also want rid of. I mean, sometimes you just like sit there open-mouthed at the nerve of these people. Crazy Kwarteng, the actual blooming Chancellor of the Exchequer, if you can believe that, he's probably going to scrap the banker bonus cap introduced by legislation in 2014, despite the political difficulties of unchaining city pay at a time of soaring living costs. They just don't care what you think. They're going to go ahead and enrich the rich anyway. This cap limits banker bonuses to twice their annual salary and is believed to be pushing talent away from London. Talent. Oh, do me a favour. Talent. Is that the same kind of talent that crashed the world in 2007?
Yes.
Yeah, that talent. You believe these people. Critics of the bonus cap argue that ditching it can boost the square mile's global competitiveness after Brexit and give banks more flexibility to reduce costs in downturns, which boils down to they'll be able to go back to ripping us off again. Boost the square mile's global competitiveness. Do me a favour. That's what that means. Taking off the shackles, Big Bang, just means that they can go back to ripping us off again. I mean, if not directly, although they do as much of that as they can get away with, but in the sense that we pay for their losses. When they win their bets, because it is just betting, they cash in. Big time. When they lose their bets, we pay to cover their losses. What a racket, eh? I mean, no wonder they donate so much cash to Tory politicians. You've got to spend a bit to make a bit. And since the cap, banks have been forced to pay staff a higher base salary in order to hire talented workers. And they're whining that this means that pay can't be cut as easily during a downturn when in the past it would have been possible to simply scrap bonuses, which is nonsense. Because if they actually are talented workers and they don't get a bonus, they'll just up sticks and go off to some other house of finagling and earn a bonus there. And anyway, bonuses don't match performance. Every CEO in the banking world gets their bonus no matter what their company does. I mean, have you ever heard of a poor ex-CEO of a bank?
No.
Don't exist. But, you know, Crazy Kwarteng has told bank bosses to expect a post-Brexit Big Bang 2.0 for financial services, Thatcher's original Big Bang being the thing that increased wealth inequality, enriched the wealthy, made the poor poorer, and led to the biggest financial crisis in our lifetimes. But I'm sure that this new one's going to be just fine. Croydon. Hello, Simon.
Hi, Nick. How you doing?
All right, thanks.
Hi. Just a bit of a brainwave in my head. I don't know if you've ever been camping.
Well, I went to Glastonbury a few times.
Okay. So it occurs to me that maybe erecting your camping gear indoors on top of your bed during the night time, the winter months that are coming for those that have camping gear, might add a little extra warmth during the night, especially for the toddlers and the families that have kids and that, to help keep them warm. But I would advise of covering the top of the tent, just because you need to allow for the air and carbon dioxide exchange during the night, so you don't suffocate yourself, so to speak. But I just thought I'd put that out there as a suggestion, because I mean, I've done night fishing, I've been camping, and it's not exactly freezing when you wake up inside a tent. So, but
well, it depends what the temperature is outside, I suppose. I'm not entirely convinced that tents actually keep you warm. They might keep you wet. If it's raining in your bedroom, then that was an excellent suggestion. But,
it was an idea I thought I'd put out there as a suggestion.
Okay, well, we're in want of suggestions. Good work, Simon. Yeah, you could erect a tent on the top of your bed and then sleep on your mattress inside the tent. Yeah, that sounds like a good plan for a well-run country. Or as Liz Truss would say...
We have never had it so good.
Bradford. Hello, Graham.
Oh, hello, Nick.
Graham.
I've been smoking since I was 11, Nick. And
11?
Yeah, both my folks smoke 60 a day.
60?
And I smoke 80 a day now.
Oh, how can you afford... hang on a minute, apart from anything else, how can you afford that? How much does a packet of cigarettes cost?
Well, I get the Ukrainian ones, Nick. They're only £3 a packet, you know.
Ukrainian?
Yeah, they come in from Ukraine, don't they, on all the wagons, you know.
Oh, don't ask me.
No, well, anyway, I'm doing a bit for war effort, you know, but...
well, I'm sure they appreciate it.
I've tried to quit 6 times, Nick.
The
longest I gave up for were 4 years.
Why did you go back?
Just stress.
Stress?
Stress, yeah. The cigarettes help me psychosis. I've got schizophrenia, and they help with that, you see.
Do they?
Yeah, they do help. They do help calm it down. It's a well-known fact.
Right.
I've tried vaping, but I just can't get on with it. I just don't like it.
Right, okay.
So,
but 80 a day, that seems... I don't think I've ever heard of anybody smoke 80 a day.
Yeah, but I'm up most of the time, Nick. I only get about 4 hours sleep.
Right, so you cut down the sleep in order to fit more smoking in. Okay, thanks, Graham. Harrow, Jonathan.
Nick, hi.
Jonathan.
I wanted to say a couple of things.
Couple of three things. Number one.
The news nowadays it's so scary now because it's just bad news story after bad news story after bad news story.
Yeah, well, there is no such thing as a good news story because if it's good news, it's not news.
But worse than before, actually. And
worse than before? Than before what?
Well, you'll get angry with me for saying this, but I voted in 2016. Before voting for Conservatives, I voted Brexit.
Right. You did the double.
Now, and now, when I look at...
you're not completely satisfied? Is that what you're going to say?
Because when I think about abroad locations, the pound now buys you very less abroad.
Very little indeed, yes.
But I voted in 2016 more out of frustration.
Yes.
And also because I'm slightly psychologically damaged, you say.
Out of frustration with what?
This is the second point.
Point number 2.
This country, and this country is going to hell in a handcart because of the crime, you say.
It's even worse than that, Jonathan. We don't even have a handcart.
Really? Because I'll tell you this, because I like this phrase, because Nick Ferrari said, and Richard Littlejohn says it as well, hell in a handcart. I'll give you quick examples. The young people in this country, they don't know nothing about the respect. When I had a good job, I talked to social workers from Singapore.
When you had a what's up?
A good job.
What's that mean?
Working, good J-O-B, job, good work.
Oh, job, J-O-B. Yeah, the J-O-B, right.
Now, the military prison in this country, if you know, if a serving soldier gets court-martial, it's stricter than normal prison because, you know, they have to, it's regimented in this country. But in Singapore...
in Singapore, you're not even allowed to chew gum.
No, but in Singapore, in the military prison, the social worker told me what they do is they put two big heavy sacks on a stick on the prisoner back and have a dart chase.
Right, you're talking about torture now. You would prefer that people were actually tortured in this country?
I think
absolutely. Let's get straight. Well, let's skip the torture and go straight to the killing. Why not?
At all of the street parties, the kiddies now. As soon as they turn 21, they all just take drugs and do pornography, and so the police would get their batons out.
I had no idea, really. The moment they turn 21, it's like a birthday bonus. Thanks for the good news, Jonathan. I had there was information that was unknown to me up to this point. Educational show, no?
No.
But he's right about respect. As Aretha Franklin once memorably sang, RPSCETP. Respect. Highgate. Hello, Anthony.
Hi, Nick. How you doing?
Good, thanks.
Good. So I just, I can't believe I've done this. I never thought I was going to do it, but I've just left the Queen lying in state. I queued since 9 o'clock this morning. I've just got off the tube now at Highgate, and I was listening to you last night, so I wanted to give you a call. And just, it was a 13-hour queue, and I can't feel my feet right now. But there's a couple of things that were said last night that I just thought, oh, okay. You said about this booking system, how you thought it would be a good idea, but I'm not sure how really practical that would be in such a tight turnaround to get this thing up and running in such a short period of time. You know, people
do me a favour, short period of time. They've been planning this for about a decade.
Yeah, but I mean, in the practicalities of people's lives, imagine if they miss their slot or something happens, or sometimes you can't get an hour when you can go, and it's not possible to join another queue to get into another hour. I think that they've from a practicality point of view, from what I saw today, they've dealt with it in the fairest way possible.
Nonsense.
There was no queue jumping. Yeah, no, seriously. No queue jumping. No.
There was. I read reports of queue jumping.
Well, apart from if you talk about those,
apart from all of the people that jumped the queues, there were no queue jumpers. You're right.
Well, there were those two TV presenters that did just that.
Well, they weren't queue jumping. They were given a VIP pass.
Well, okay, but from what I saw today, from I arrived at Southwark Park at 9:30, and when we left there tonight, the same, I don't know, 20, 30 people that were around me were the same faces in the same order. Right, Nobody pushed or anything.
Yeah, okay, 30 people didn't push in, but I mean, I'm certainly not. I'm not going to get into a discussion about whether there were or not queue jumpers, because there were. You just didn't see any in the 30 people that you were around. Okay, well that's great, but there's hundreds of thousands of people have queued up, and also it doesn't make any sense at all to make people of all ages and physical ability to queue for 14 hours, continually shuffling forward. That's ridiculous. They should have given them a time slot. Arrive 10 minutes before your time, and you'll be in a small queue, and you'll be able to get through, and you won't have to queue up for 14 hours. It'll be 10 minutes, and you'll be able to carry on with your life. It just doesn't make any sense to force people. I mean, it seems like torturing people who are trying to do what they think is the right thing.
Kind of, but I would say that there was
kind of.
Well, hang on, but hang on. But when you arrive,
just a little light torture. That's all.
Well, okay, I'll be honest with you. Yes, at 11 hours in, I'd agree with that statement.
Right.
You know, yeah, absolutely.
Name one other thing that requires you to queue for 14 hours.
Well, nothing, zero. And if you ask me to do it again, the answer would be no. But what I would say is, for the first, I don't know, 11 hours till the sun went down. Basically, you're talking with people. There's a nice atmosphere. You get to stop and see things in town that you don't ordinarily get to stop and stare at, because you've got no choice but to stand still and look around you. So
there's always the option to standing still, regardless of where you are.
Yeah, but
unless you're in the middle. You can, though.
Well, okay, but you go to work and you go home and you're busy. You go to the gym, you see your friends, but you're not looking at the rooftops or anything like that until you're standing there and you're like, God, this... And especially
Anthony, lift your gaze from the pavement. The beauty is all around you.
Okay.
Just take a moment to drink it in. Mill Hill, hello, Jay.
Hey, mate, how you doing? You all right?
Good, thanks.
I'm enjoying the show. I think you're quite funny. You come across quite sarcastic, which is good at this time of night, so you're keeping me going. So props to you.
Well, thanks, Jay.
No worries, mate. I like listening to you on the radio. In terms of these two candidates, I don't want either of them, to be honest. Yeah. I don't really like either of them. No. But if I'm being frank, I'm kind of with you. I think Penny Morden should have been in the final two, and I would have probably. Oh please.
Oh please.
Like Survivor.
You what?
You know, I thought. So for me, the reason I think should have been a breath of fresh air compared to the other two, been in the cabinet already, and the part of Boris Johnson's little plan. And, you know what I mean? Like, I think
Jay, it looks like they're all the blooming same to me. I mean, they've all fallen on one side or the other. They've all made their choice. They've all said that they're perfectly happy with however it turns out. If either of them step into the breach, it don't make no never mind.
We don't have a choice, though, do we? We've only got like the thing is, like, we've got to choose one of them, haven't we?
No,
like,
we don't. We, Jay, don't get to choose either of them. But I go with your first instinct. Neither of the above. Neither of the above. No thanks. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
But no. On the line to tell us more about these proposed tax cuts is the Director General of the Institute of Economic Affairs and a former advisor to the Conservative Party under David Cameron, Mark Littlewood. Hello, Mark.
Hi, Nick. Good to be with you.
Oh, thanks for being here. We've actually done this before, haven't we? Your own David Cameron cancelled 8 free ports, to my recollection. Why did he do that?
Yeah, there's the interesting thing here, I think you summed it up quite well, is if you want to help poorer areas, or with the case of ports, was more to try and make sure there wasn't bad regulation that really gummed up things coming into and leaving the country. The problem's this. Are you simply dislocating activity from one area to the other? Well, that might be good if you're in one of the zones, but isn't good for the economy overall. But we haven't seen the full details yet of what Liz Truss is planning. But I think this might actually finally put some flesh on the bones of this levelling up agenda that, of course, Boris Johnson's government was very fond of the slogan, but nobody knew what it meant. And the idea would be that in areas of the UK that have been left behind, somewhat poorer, haven't done well economically over the past generation or so, that you would make it easier to set up businesses, employ people, pay not quite as much tax as elsewhere in the country, and you would hope to bring growth to those areas and level up Britain. And I think you could probably do that with a mixture of tax cuts and the removal of some of the more petty, difficult and complex regulations that are often standing in the way of businesses being established.
Well, when people hear we're going to get rid of red tape and we're going to, let companies enjoy themselves more and make more money, some people might think, well, that sounds like a good idea, until the reality, which is, I guess, including pouring raw sewage into rivers, actually comes into the light. The idea of all of this is being sold to us as it's good for us personally, the public. But it isn't really. It's good for corporations that don't actually fancy the idea of paying tax.
Well, I'm pretty sure that allowing companies to pour raw sewage without any form of compensation into our rivers or seas wouldn't be one of the regulations released or relaxed. But let me give you an example of the sort of thing that I imagine the Prime Minister might be thinking about. At the moment, we have some of the toughest, strictest land use planning laws in the whole of Europe. Now, land use planning, that sounds really boring and technical. What do I mean by that? It's extraordinarily difficult if a commercial property has been used for purpose A, I don't know, let's say a bank or a pub or an estate agent, to convert it into a use by a new purpose, purpose B. You have to go through a huge rigmarole of filling in forms and it going through the local council can take months. And again, you might take the view that doesn't really encourage enterprise. I think one of the things they might relax is to say, if it was a commercial property, you can change the commercial use that it was put for. Now, I don't think they're going to say, and you can pump raw sewage into the rivers. I sure as God hope not. But there's an awful lot of paperwork that's in the way of allowing businesses to thrive. And I don't think it would just be a question of, isn't that just good for the businesses? I mean, thriving businesses would be good for these areas. They can take on more employees on higher wages and whatever wage you're on. If the personal tax rates were perhaps lower, you'll be taking home more in your pocket. So if we could find a mechanism of injecting enterprise and growing businesses into some parts of the northeast, some parts of the East Midlands have done particularly badly over the past 20 or 30 years, then I say, what's not to like? That doesn't mean you need to torch every piece of regulation or say to hell with it, with all health and safety rules. Of course not. But I think there's an awful lot on the books that is quite a barrier to investment and enterprise. And if you could focus it in these areas, perhaps they could catch up some of the richer parts of the country in London and the South East.
Well, forgive me, but planning is changing the use of a building from commercial to residential or one type of commercial to another is a bit of a thin reason for what looks like a sort of a nuclear option. I mean, the government can change the planning laws. They have, after all, been in power for the last 12 years. They could have done it already if that's what they needed to do. They don't need to carve out parts of the country to effectively make them areas that corporations can run as though they were their own state.
I don't think it's going to be anything like as far as that. And my example on the commercial use you can put a property to was just one example. But could you take a view that business rates, for example, and again, I'm hypothesising here, I don't have the inside track on what the Prime Minister or the Chancellor will announce, but that maybe business rates should be lower in areas of the country that have frankly struggled to get thriving businesses. Not so much of a problem in London over the past 20 or 30 years, if you were to see the growth of businesses here, but apparently quite a big problem in a lot of areas, as I say, in East Midlands, red wall areas as they've come to be known. So lower business rates might help regenerate some of our towns and cities that have fallen on particularly hard times. I would think that's a welcome thing if we are worried about the paucity of economic growth going way back to the 80s, really, in many of these areas, and you want to supercharge it. But, Nick, you make a very good point. I think that the final destination should be one investment zone or one enterprise zone, as they used to be called, and actually called the United Kingdom. And if these measures were shown to work and encourage employment and higher wages and higher investment in these areas, I don't think you should stop there. I think you should start rolling them out across the board. But probably a good place to start is those areas that have suffered the most and would benefit the most from an injection of investment and a boost to entrepreneurialism and business growth.
Well, of course, the problem with rolling them out nationwide is that other countries with which we have trade deals or hope to get one will look very unfavourably on such a thing, because we will be undercutting their own business model. So they're not going to go for that, which presumably is why they're talking about zones, not rolling out over the whole country. But you talk about, this being good for areas of deprivation. Surely areas of deprivation are in need of what tax gets. Taxation that comes into government gives us the police and the NHS and the fire service and the roads and essentially everything that we all depend on, but particularly those that are less well off. How is giving corporations a tax break, which would lead to less tax coming into the government, how is that going to help us?
Well, I'll tell you why I think it will, Nick, is that we've tried going down the path of looking at poorer areas of the UK and throwing state money at them and saying, well, these areas are poor, so we'll issue a grant from Whitehall, we'll concoct some grand scheme in the corridors of power at Westminster, and we will impose this on Grimsby.
Has that actually been tried? I mean, I'm not sure that's true.
Enormously. If you were to take a town that hasn't thrived recently, let's say Hartlepool, the proportion of Hartlepool's economy and towns like it, which are state spending, has gone up enormously over the past 20, 30 or 40 years. That doesn't seem to have cracked the problem of these towns not doing very well. If more government spending in those areas had been the answer, they would be flourishing far more than London is today. So I think that strategy has failed. It hasn't incubated new enterprises and businesses in these towns. Often the high streets are in a terrible state, full of just sort of charity shops, bookmakers, or closed down altogether. So I think a strategy of encouraging business from the bottom up, rather than this being Whitehall and the government with their blueprints from the top down, is exactly what these sort of places need, because we've tried the previous strategy, the one you've just enunciated, Nick, for decades now, with a really appalling rate of return in a good number of towns and cities right across Britain.
What people say about these free ports is that it doesn't actually create any wealth for the country. It doesn't create new jobs. It doesn't lead to a high-wage economy. All it does is transfers jobs from one area to another over this line, where this imaginary line on the ground where this free port will start. And so the locals will be swapping one potential job with good conditions and conditions of service, and being forced essentially to take up a job. There's the same job which has just been shifted a couple of miles into this free zone area where they'll get less wages and they won't get paid holidays, and that seems to be the direction of travel, stripping out all of the benefits that have been hard fought for and won over the decades by workers and unions.
Well, you're right to point out the worry that if all that happens is that we relocate businesses that would exist anyway from town A to town B, this won't be much of a success. I guess the people of town B might relish it, but that isn't really, I think, a very sensible strategic plan. But we must think, surely to God, don't we, that there are businesses that would exist, that could exist, that are on the cusp of coming into being, but are being held back because tax rates are too high, or regulation and red tape that you need to go through to get a business going are too high. I don't think that means you'll get 1 million new businesses, but marginally, on the edge, there must be quite a number that don't make it because it isn't worth the candle.
Well, it is. Sorry to interrupt.
If you can incubate those businesses in these areas, I don't think that I don't think that's associated with bringing back the Dickensian workhouse or appalling conditions for labourers. Indeed, that's what we witness in many of these areas at the moment. If you can get thriving new businesses, you would anticipate wages and incomes to go up.
Well, it's an interesting.
Right,
it's an okay, but it's an interesting argument that it would decrease the amount of red tape because this government and the previous one have increased the amount of red tape that businesses have to suffer from by making it incredibly difficult to trade with our biggest trading partner. This bonfire of red tape is the exact opposite. It's the creation of a mountain of it, making it more difficult for businesses, not easier. And also, we have a 19% corporation tax rate, one of the lowest in the developed world. How could we go lower than that?
Well, two different points there, Nick. Firstly, on red tape, I'd rather agree with you. I think that the successive governments have been disappointing. Worth remembering that most of our businesses only sell domestically. I'm not saying we should turn a blind eye to exporters, but if you're exporting to the US market or the European market, you'll need to comply with their regulations. But if you're one of the vast majority of businesses that creates and sells within the UK, particularly small businesses, those things don't need to concern you anything like as much. You're just trying to build in the UK, employ in the UK, and sell to the UK. And on corporation tax, yes, at the moment, it's pretty competitive. Not as competitive as the Republic of Ireland, by the way. That's 15%. So still higher here. And all the government has pledged there is not to jack it up to 25%. But I don't think we should see this as a race to the bottom. The Republic of Ireland's done phenomenally well by undercutting us by 4%, and I think we should applaud them for that on corporation tax. On balance, if there's not much in it, you might well choose the Republic of Ireland as the destination to set up your business rather than the United Kingdom because of the prevailing lower corporation tax rates. And what we want to see between countries right across the globe, trading freely for sure, but is some competition between them on tax and regulation. We encourage competition between businesses and companies and enterprises. I'm all for a bit of competition between governments as well. And let's see whether we can set our tax rates and get our regulation into shape in a way that is better for the UK than they do it in Ireland or France or Italy or Germany. But I'm with you, Nick, long way to go. We have typically added to regulation and red tape, not just in the last 2 years, but in the last 20 or 30. I mean, the rule books now in most sectors are so complex that a single human being couldn't hope to understand it in their lifetimes. We have a tax code that's the longest in the world,
yes,
probably by most counts.
I think
why not peel that back and become a bit more competitive with places like the Irish Republic?
Well, I think the reason that it's so complex, the tax code is so complex, so as to provide corporations who can employ accountants in large, shiny buildings to find loopholes within it that would be beyond the wit of an ordinary man or woman. But just
I'm rather with you. That needs to end. Right. I mean, that nearly all of the tax code is highly complicated loopholes. I think the tax code is now about 8 or 9 times the length of War and Peace. It's absolutely ludicrous. That needs to be simplified, along with all of the sort of regulatory compliance we have. That doesn't mean you toss it all out of the window, that you don't care for health and safety. But it does mean you need to keep things fairly simple, rather than having this rather deadweight industry of compliance accountants and gaming the system. Far better to have companies actually focusing on producing and selling rather than gaming the tax system.
Right, but the problem with relying on the kindness of companies is that they don't have any. We have an idea of where this is going because DP World, the Dubai-based organisation that owned P&O, who were going to be part of the Solent Freeport, we know where their mind is on this because they quite publicly fired 800 British workers and replaced them at no notice with cheaper people on worse contracts. So that is actually the direction of travel here, is it not?
No, I don't think it is. I mean, I would readily concede that free market capitalism doesn't immediately make every company kind-hearted or even honourable. It doesn't guarantee you virtue, but what it does guarantee you is that vice will be punished. I mean, that episode has been catastrophic for P&O's brand and reputation, and I would even go so far as to say long-term survival. So if you don't need to act as a company in a free market system out of the kindness of your heart, your aim might simply be to maximise your profits. But if you are seen to act in a cruel, underhand, or in the case of sort of firing workers at a minute's notice, quite possibly illegal way, you are very likely going to go out of business.
I guess
business a lot of harm.
Yeah, I guess P&O's mistake there, as far as they would be concerned, or as they might think, is that they did it too much, too quick. If they just dribbled in the changes, then they would have got away with it. Just finally, though, the first question I asked you, I'm not sure you actually addressed. David Cameron, who you used to advise, scrapped 8 free ports because we used to have free ports when we were in the European Union. That was a big lie that was told by the Leave camp, that we had to leave the EU to get these free ports. We had them when we were in the EU, so why did David Cameron scrap them?
Well, I don't think he thought there was enough of a gain while we were in the European Union, a rather different world. When you're out of the European Union, and as you rightly pointed out, that means we're no longer regulatorily aligned with the single market on our doorstep, let alone with dozens of other countries around the world in which we trade. There's now a better case for having free port zones in which you can move things in and out of the UK without having to comply with 3, 6 or 8 sets of regulations simultaneously. That was neither a problem nor an opportunity, really, when we were in the European single market under David Cameron's reign, but is both a problem and an opportunity today. Now we're outside of the EU.
But just one more question then. If that is an opportunity, am I not right in thinking that the EU would not stand for us undercutting their standards and their sort of taxation policy in order to gain an unfair advantage over them? They just wouldn't put up with that.
Well, I don't think it's an unfair advantage. It's a choice. And as you rightly pointed out, we've already undercut them on corporation tax, and we were undercutting them on corporation tax when we were in the EU. The EU does not have absolutely uniform rules, regulations and taxation, even across its own members. Taxes, income taxes, sales taxes, inheritance taxes, corporate taxes vary wildly between Germany, France and the Netherlands. It's not unfair for any country, whether in the EU or out, to try and design the tax system that it thinks is best for itself and is going to encourage growth. That's what competition's all about. What the Republic of Ireland has already alluded to, have done really rather spectacularly well on corporation tax, lower than all the other EU member states, even though it's in the EU. There's no harm with that at all. We want governments to compete with each other. We want to learn from each other. If we see the French or the Portuguese or the Dutch or the Americans doing something smart and right in tax and regulations, then let's cut and paste it and copy it here. But let's also chart our own path too. And the governments that come out with the best policies and produce the most growth and the most amount of jobs and the highest amount of income for their citizenry should be applauded, not considered to be undercutting people. That's what different democracies are there to do.
All right, good to talk to you, Mark. Mark Littlewood, Director General of the Institute of Economic Affairs, former advisor to the Conservative Party under David Cameron. Hampton, hello, Matthew. Matthew?
Oh, I'll just take it off loudspeaker. Sorry, Nick.
Take it off a loudspeaker.
Yeah, I hope you, your production man, are having a good weekend so far. Well,
it's been okay.
Well, as I was just saying to him a moment ago, sorry, I'm taking this off loudspeaker.
Take us off loudspeaker.
Yeah, that's better.
There you are.
Now, I was just saying a moment ago to your production man, you know, we're not moaning, but we're criticising, as it were.
Moaning.
Stop whining.
Yes.
You know, the situation with, rises in prices for this, that and the other.
Rises in prices, yeah.
And, you know, the inflation and what have you. and obviously it's going to be a struggle for a lot of people.
Yes. Where's this going?
But the bottom line is, Nick.
Bottom line. Here it comes. Grip onto something firm, everybody. I have a strong feeling of where this is going. Go ahead.
Whilst I sympathise with the people from the Ukraine. Why on earth?
Why
are we giving 10 million to the Ukraine when this country's kind of struggling?
10 million?
You know, surely we should get our house in order.
10 million?
Look after our own rather than people from the Ukraine.
Yeah, I know. 10 million? Is that all we're giving? It must be more than that, surely.
Well, I believe it's 10 million or something like that.
Right. Well, that's a drop in the ocean. We won't miss it, Matthew. That's the kind of money that Boris Johnson would call chicken feed, Abbot. Yes.
Yeah, loose change.
Exactly.
Yeah. But I still don't think it's particularly fair because, there's a lot of people struggling right now, and I don't, you don't see the Italians or the Germans or the French giving money out.
You don't see them do it? You mean to say that you've actually looked into it and done research and come up with a figure of how much they are actually giving? Or you just assume that we are doing our bit and that's that was the only thing that was of interest to you? That you think that us not giving... It doesn't even matter whether it's 10 million or 10 billion. Giving whatever it is to Ukraine is going to make the slightest bit of difference one way or the other in this country. You can't possibly think that.
Like I say, I sympathise fully with the people in the Ukraine.
Apparently not.
I don't see why we're giving them handouts. And
Wow. Matthew, it is... of no consequence whatsoever, the amount of money that we're giving to the Ukraine. It would affect us in no way. Whatever we are about to suffer during this coming winter is a political choice from our government. France, I'll say it again, is keeping the increase in their fuel bills to 4%. That's their government's political choice. Ours is to let us go hang. Wouldn't make a slightest bit of difference, Matthew. I mean, I know that you might, keep warm in the winter by tapping into your fury about foreigners, but it really makes no difference whatsoever, however much money is being given to the Ukrainians. But thanks for thinking of them, Matthew. Appreciate it. Preston, Davida.
All right, Nico.
How you going?
Yeah, I smoke 50 rollers a day, pipe tobacco, because it's cheaper.
That's quite a lot of smoking.
Yeah, it doesn't burn quite as well as cigarette tobacco, but it's cheaper, like I say. But anyway, my life expectancy is greater than a Metropolitan Police officer.
I don't really know what to say about that. Are you?
Well, it is.
Are you suggesting that smoking is more healthy than being a police person?
Well, you could, if you want to put it like that, yeah. In London, yeah.
But is that? Are you saying that that's a positive reason to continue to smoke?
No, I'm just saying that my life expectancy is greater than a Metropolitan Police officer.
Right, statistically speaking. Okay, well, that's an interesting conclusion there, Davida. Thanks for that. Bexhill, Steve.
Hello, Nick. Great show, mate.
Thanks.
You're a star.
Cheers, Steve.
Listen, right, what I was saying, do you know Tobias Edwards should have been our next Prime Minister, right, because of the war in Ukraine. He's got his head screwed on the other day, right?
Right.
But you know what's happening in Africa, right?
Well, what specifically do you have in mind?
Well, there's only one country, right, that declined from the Russian gas and the exports, yeah? And the rest of them, right? The only reason it is because China invests in Africa. No other country does.
Well, that's not entirely true, but China has been spending a boatload of money in Africa in order to secure the Africans' service and.
You know what they're doing? They're buying land up, right, to feed their own animals.
Right. But what are you suggesting, though, that we do?
Well,
the same.
I'm not a vegetarian, put it that way.
Right.
So, you know, but we got to get these countries out there, right? So we got to go to war, right, with Russia.
Right, not Africa. Right, Russia first, then Africa later. We've got to go to war with Russia, says Steve. OK, Steve, we'll put it on the top of Liz's to-do list. Just as soon as she's gone to war with France. Brentford. Hello, Colin.
Hello, mate. My immediate thoughts when I heard about her 1 million she's aiming for, where's she going to put them?
I'm not sure that there's an actual number on it, but there is 1 million jobs that need filling, as British people aren't don't seem to be inclined to fill them, then perhaps that is right. Actually, there's 2 million job vacancies.
Right. What about the 300,000 homeless we have in the UK as I'm speaking to you right now? And what about the 8 million people living in unaffordable, insecure and unsuitable housing right now as I'm speaking to you? And what about there's 3 million young people living with their parents because they haven't got the money to get on the housing ladder? And the way this is going to go is the immediate effect is higher rents.
Yes, that's possible. Yes,
it's as secure as the Bank of England higher rents. They vote Tory.
Right. Okay, Colin. I mean, do you have an answer to any of this? I mean, we do have 2 million jobs that need doing. We don't want to do them. They used to be done by people who were born in other countries who came here for either to live here permanently and do those jobs, or to just come here for a couple of months during the summer to pick fruit or whatever. So how are we going to get them done?
Well, that was the point I'm trying to make. That's the core point I'm trying to make. What is the solution? There is no solution. We don't have anywhere to put them, and we're 240,000 primary school places short. Our classrooms are bulging at the seams. Where are you going to put them? That's a very simple question, but everybody seems to obfuscate and prevaricate and procrastinate. No one says, well, we don't have anywhere to put them. And that's the fact.
But if we had 1 million more than we do now, post-Brexit, then they did live somewhere.
Yes, on the streets we've got 300,000 homeless. I just read a report about a family from Eastern Europe who took up residence in an abandoned car lockup. There's something seriously wrong, and we can't house the people we've got now. And our Prime Minister is advocating bringing in another 1 million. And as you just reminded me, someone else said 2 million.
Well, there's 2 million jobs that are vacant, and either we just kiss goodbye to those jobs and we say, well, we're not really interested in a farming sector, and we don't really care about the care industry, we're not interested in retail or pubs or any of these hotels, all of this, the services sector. Either we just don't care about those industries, which we actually rely on, or we're going to have to fill them somehow. I mean, there's no getting around it. They used to be done. Now they are being done no more. Brexit is the thing that differentiates the one from the other. Orpington. Hello, Luke.
Hello, Nick. Good evening.
Luke.
For me, I think it's very important, assuming it is Liz Truss who wins, that she focuses, or at least spends a lot of time, helping SMEs, small to medium enterprise businesses. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a business owner myself of an SME company, and it is so important that she does that. We make up 5.6 million companies in the UK. It's 5.6 million enterprises in the UK. They employ 26 million people, 27 million people, and the small to medium companies, that's basically all of them except for 4,000 companies, because that's the big ones, produce 4.7, almost £5 trillion worth of revenue every year.
Well, give us an idea of what it is that you would like her to address.
So what could they do? Obviously, we need someone who's good at business, someone who's got the feet on the ground, who's speaking to people through LinkedIn things. I think they need to sort out the red tape. They need to encourage,
But now, wait a minute. The red tape that was caused by them, by their insistence on leaving the European Union, is that the red tape you mean?
There's all sorts of red tape, both sides, in fairness. I think they need to simplify it. They need to give them... I mean, look, one reason why small businesses collapse in the first 18 months, 80% of them do, is cash flow. And the cash flow comes because ultimately they're not paid quick enough by the big companies. Big companies use small companies as mini banks. Okay, all the time we're owed a lot of money. They need to sort that out. There needs to be some sort of thing to say, look, you have to pay within 30 days, for example, because it's just not fair that we pay our people over 2 weeks, like I do, and yet we don't get paid for 50, 60 days. So then you have a big gap in cash. Obviously, some businesses collapse and so forth.
But as you say, that is the main reason why small businesses collapse. That has been the case for many, many decades now.
Many years, that's right.
And we've had 12 years of the Conservative Party, and they have been disinclined to do anything about that. So what else do you suggest?
Okay, well, definitely what they need to do. A lot of people just don't understand business. They go into business because they like painting or something, and they start a painting business. The fact is people need to become business people. They need help. They need advisors. They need business coaches. If I was in charge or up there somewhere, I would say, look, let's provide really cheap or even free business coaching to these people. Let's get some decent bookkeepers in, accountants. Let's help them out with the basics of business so they can focus on running the business and obviously have good people around them. A lot of people try and do it all themselves. They obviously make some huge mistakes if they don't have good mentors and things.
These are all very good ideas, but these are not the kind of things that Liz Truss is propounding at the moment. I mean, they're very quite complex and niche ideas. Perhaps she has something in mind in that regard. But of the things that she has said, corporation tax reduction, is that going to make a difference?
Not hugely. Listen, as an entrepreneur, we know how to make money, we know how to find money and things, so that's not going to make a huge difference. You need help to know where to find it and how to look after and spend wise in things.
What about fuel? I mean, let's talk about that just for a moment, if we can.
Yeah.
Your fuel bill, presumably, has, like other businesses, gone through the roof. What does she need to do about that?
She needs to cancel the U-list charge, for example. I mean, at the end of the day, £25 a day per day added onto every bill adds up. Ultimately, it's the consumer who pays, because obviously we provide a service and we have to add that onto the bill. You've got the congestion charge and things like that. They need to scrap these little things that they thought were going to generate long-term money. They need to help their businesses to proceed. There's 1 million businesses alone of entrepreneurs in London.
Okay, all right. Good to talk to you, Luke. Isleworth, Ravi.
Good morning, Nick.
Morning.
I was hoping after the budget statement, Rishi would pop up with his tight trousers and short tie and ask a question. I think history would look at Trust and Quasi as a gamble, as gamblers. If it works out and the gamble works, they'll be heroes. But I doubt it. I think Rishi...
Well, it depends what you mean. Because people are taking them on face value. I don't believe that they have any intention that any of these policies that they're enacting will help the majority of the people. They are very laser-like focused on helping the donor class, those people that keep the Tories in the manner to which they have become accustomed, and to hell with everybody else. So it will work. It most certainly will work for the rich.
You see, Nick, I'm a lifelong conservative. I worked hard. I built my business. I think I would agree with you with just two simple facts. I think these two are helping. I think, I don't want to say, if it does fail, Quasi will go to the banking board and Liz will go to the oil board. But at least with Rishi Sunak, I mean, why would they reverse the national insurance increase when we're all going to get old? And that was supposed to help all of us. I mean, the national insurance...
Why did they have to have a national insurance increase in the first place when they told us that we were going to get £350 million a week extra for the NHS? Where was that money?
But what I mean is, with Rishi, at least he helped the... I shouldn't say this, the mere mortals. Would you agree with me? At least he was in favour of helping the working masses.
I'll agree with you on this. It would have been better if we'd had Rishi Sunak than Liz Truss, and that was the opinion of the majority of the people in this country. But now that we have Liz Truss, it actually might be better for those people that don't want a Conservative Party, because she is way less popular than Rishi Sunak. At least Rishi Sunak is the kind of person that you wouldn't mind having a cup of tea with. Does anybody want to have a cup of tea with Liz Truss?
No.
Bromley, Martin. Martin.
What happened to Jimmy Hoffa?
Martin.
Yeah, what happened to Jimmy Hoffa?
He's propping up a freeway.
Yeah, I know that. You know that. But I don't think you're the man that could run this country either.
You don't think who could?
I don't think you could.
Me?
Sometimes, no, but you talk about everybody's faults, but you don't say, you don't give a solution to the argument that you're talking about.
You want me to run the country? Always go with your gut instincts. If you think you're talking to a moron, you're probably talking to a moron. My fault was giving him the benefit of the doubt. Never give anybody the benefit of the doubt. No, 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 no.
No.
Hertfordshire. Hello, Jacob.
Hi, Nick. How are you?
Good, thanks.
So I was just going to first say that you ended that session with the guest by saying that, like, the younger people were more likely to be on Harry and Meghan's side, and the older people, well, I kind of proved that wrong because I'm 18. I definitely don't side with Harry and Meghan. They moved away from here to get away from all the publicity and to get on with their life privately, as they said.
Well, I'm not sure they moved away to get away from publicity in general. They might have moved away to get away from the British press, and that's kind of understandable given what they would associate with the British press, up to and including the hounding of his mother.
Well, I just reckon that they're both, I don't have to say this nicely, really, I reckon they're both a bit hypocritical. For starters, they go off slagging the whole family for being racist and this, that, and the other, and then they expect them to pay for their security when they come back. I mean, well, come on.
No, they weren't expecting the royal family to pay for the security. That would be our job. They
wanted the taxpayer to pay, but why would the taxpayer? But why? Because they're royals. That's the only reason we'd pay for it.
That's right.
So don't come using your royal benefits if you've just been slagging off the royals for about a year.
Well, have you ever said a negative thing about your own family?
Not in front of hundreds of millions of people.
Well, no, of course not, because you're not famous. But that's neither here nor there. If you said it in front of one person...
Even if I was famous, I wouldn't do that. And then expect my family to side with me after being blasting them for a year. Absolutely not. That'd be ridiculous.
But does it really amount to blasting them? I mean, I know that's the word that the press like to use to, they'll put the word fury in the title and all of these sort of tricks that they play. But are people actually furious with them for telling the truth as they see it?
I don't think it's the truth as they see it. I think it's all dramatised. I think the mental health thing that she keeps saying is very fashionable, makes her sound intelligent, like she knows what she's talking about.
Well, fashionable is an odd word to say. What I think you mean is that it's more acceptable now to talk about things that people are suffering from. I know you did, and I'm saying it's an odd word to use. I think what you mean is that mental health problems are now more easily discussed because people are less biased against them. That's not really a negative thing. Manchester, hello, Marcus.
Hi, Nick. I'd just like to say I'm a big-time fan of yours.
Thanks.
Basically, what my concern is obviously the Ukraine crisis. I'm sure it's on many people's minds. But it's sort of the recent escalation with the chance of, like, nuclear conflict.
Yeah, global thermonuclear war, yeah.
Yeah, of course, yeah. And fortunately, I was born in the mid-'80s, so I didn't experience the Cold War era of, the nuclear annihilation. But it seems like it's repeating itself almost.
Right. Well, there's no point in worrying about it, mate, because there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, I guess so. But I feel like hopefully the current policy with the tax cuts could do something about that.
What?
Cutting the banking bonuses and trickling down. I'm a banker myself, and I'm pretty good at...
Yeah, you know what? I've decided not to believe you anymore. I'm just getting a feeling...
Warning!
All right, thanks a lot, Marcus. Hampton, hello, Matthew.
Oh, good evening to you, Nick.
Good evening to you,
your
Matthew.
Excellent production man there.
Thanks.
Now, I don't understand all this, like, sniggering. I know everyone's got their own opinion. But,
Sniggering? Who's sniggering?
Yeah. Well, about Richie Sunak.
They're sniggering?
Well, a lot of people doesn't seem... Well, when I say sniggering, a lot of people don't seem to want him to get the position.
No.
Now, I see him as the ideal man to get the position.
Ideal? In what sense ideal? What is it that Rishi Sunak brings to the table that makes him an ideal candidate to run the country?
Well, he's very professional, very smart.
Professional, smart, right?
I've seen him on Question Time,
and he's smart. He's got a tie and a shirt and everything.
Yeah, GMTV and stuff like that, and he comes across as very well,
smart.
Very educated.
Educated, right? Warm. Warm.
Yeah, no, I'd like him to get the position.
Right? Why though?
Well, I just like him.
You just like him based on what?
Well, I just think he's, he could be quite effective, and I just see him as the ideal successor to Boris.
Right, but okay, I'll just try one more time. But why is he ideal? What about him makes him ideal? You mean to say that Boris Johnson can't dress himself and Rishi Sunak can? Is that what you mean?
Well, I mean, there is that to it, but I mean, surely Nick, you can see how bright and professional he comes across.
Bright. Well, I'm not sure that bright. He doesn't seem bright to me. Not bright in the sense that of the skills that would be required to run an actual country. I mean, he might be able to run some finance business. He might be able to be a part of some hedge fund somewhere, but that does not qualify you to run anything other than a hedge fund.
Deep down, who do you actually see getting the position?
Well, they told us over and over again that Liz Truss is going to get it. I can't believe that either of them are going to get it, but then I can't believe that what's-his-name is our current Prime Minister.
Yeah. Wait.
I mean, he's the actual leader of this country right now. How far have we fallen?
Well, we have, I have to admit.
Right.
Which is a shame, but...
It's a shame. It's a shame. Right. Well, let's agree on that. It is a shame. Oh, well, never mind. It's only our country. There it goes. There goes our country. Down the drain.
Bye-bye.
Never mind. It's a shame, innit? Swindon. Hello, Gary.
Listen, it's me. Is it me?
It sounds like you.
Right, listen. Okay. Before I say what I'm going to say, right?
Is this not you saying what you want to say?
Can I test your musical knowledge, right?
Yeah, go ahead.
Quickly.
But keep in mind that this will be the last thing that you say. Test my musical knowledge. Go ahead.
Have you heard of a group called Magna Carta?
Magna Carta, vaguely.
Lord of the Ages.
Lord of the Ages. What about it?
Right, I applied that in my own mind to the lockdown. To cut a long story short, right?
Too late. If you wanted to cut a long story short, then you should have started earlier.
Wait, we'll do the second one.
No, hang on a minute.
King Crimson.
But wait a minute. Was that the first one, or is this the? I'm lost.
This I want to do this really quick because this had to be done before I actually say the main thing. Right?
Well, I'm sorry, but I'm sort of tripping over the thing that's happening before your main thing, Gary. Something about King Crimson and Magna Carta. Sounds like hippie, drippy, rock and roll to me.
Yowza.
I don't know. I'm getting a gut feeling on this one. Always go with your gut feeling. Thanks a lot, Gary, for whatever that was. Westminster. Hello, Dominic.
How you doing, Nick? You all right?
Yeah, good, thanks.
First time caller with you.
Good man.
I'm sick to the back teeth with this Harry and Meghan shambles that's going on constantly.
Now, are you sick with them or with the coverage?
Them and the coverage.
Both, right. Now, why are you tired of them?
Nick, I'm bored. I'm bored of hearing about...
Right, but so that suggests that it's the coverage you don't like, rather than them as individuals.
Well, I had a lot of respect for Harry pre-Meghan.
But he's the same chap, and he's doing the same things. I mean, he's still the man behind the Invictus Games. They're still doing charitable work. They still seem to be caring, decent people.
But she's wearing the trousers, and he needs to grow a pair of.
Well, that is a ridiculously outdated opinion to have, Dominic. Like women's place is at the sink. Come on, I'm not going to let you get away with that. Let's talk about that with Claire Pearsall. Claire is the political commentator and former special advisor to the Immigration Minister Caroline Noakes at the Home Office between 2018 and 2019. Hello, Claire.
Hi, good evening.
So what were your thoughts then when you read this proposal by Liz Truss?
I was surprised, shocked, in awe of quite what she's doing. I don't understand why now she looks to change the immigration rules to bring over more people when we've seen 32,000 people arriving on the shores of this country. We can't get a hold of immigration, and the whole point of Brexit was to add some control to the borders. So I'm not entirely sure which way Liz Truss is going and who she's trying to please.
Well, the difference between people arriving at the shore in Kent in dinghies and what she's proposing is some sort of order to it, some purpose to it, perhaps.
Well, we already have a visa system which is under strain, so to add to it is just going to lengthen the time people are waiting. The one thing I do agree with is looking at the seasonal agricultural workers scheme, because there has been a need for extra people coming into the country, and the nature of seasonal work means that these people come, they work, and they go home again. What is unclear as to what other sectors she's going to open that up to, and how long are the visas going to be given for? Does it confer the right to bring over family? I think there are an awful lot of details that we haven't heard. And, of course, we haven't heard from the new Home Secretary, Suella Braverman.
Well, she appears to be against these proposals. There seems to be trouble at the top.
I understand that there is some pushback from people also like Hemi Badenoch, who is quite concerned at opening up visa-free or ease of visa action between India and the UK. And I can see that this is going to be a really difficult sell, especially to those Brexit voting colleagues in the House of Commons. I think Liz Truss is now setting herself up for quite a fight.
Is it not just the introduction of the rhetoric to real life, to reality, when you could say that we must stop people coming here from the European Union, but when they go, after being yelled at for 5 years to get out, and we find ourselves in want of 2 million people to do the jobs that aren't getting done, then what else is she supposed to do?
Well, I do agree, and it was something that we flagged up in our time during the Home Office, that the seasonal workers, for example, were going to be needed, and the scheme had to be brought in quite quickly. We left in 2019. I don't know what the plans are from that point forward. But yes, there was always going to be a crunch point. If you're reliant upon, especially EU workers, filling up the market, and then you take that away, there are going to be gaps. But it looks like also the Prime Minister is looking to put in an exceptional visa category. Now, we've had these previously, so I'm not quite sure what she wants her immigration system to look like and what she wants it to do. And unless she can explain that really quickly, I think there's going to be real trouble ahead of the conference.
Well, the thing that she keeps saying about this and about jobs in general is that she wants a high-wage, high-skill economy. So she's saying that, she wants highly skilled, expert people coming from abroad to fill some of the high-paid jobs that are in want of being filled here. But the truth, when people do ask for a high wage, is that they get labelled enemies of the people and militant lefties and so on. So there doesn't appear to be much move in the direction of a high wage. And the people that we need the most aren't those people who are going to fill the floors at banking buildings. They're people who make coffee. They're people who pick fruit. They're people who pull potatoes out the ground and wash cars and all of these things. These aren't high-skilled, high-wage jobs. It's the opposite of that.
It is. The largest sector will be healthcare. Now, they are not well-paid positions, and they should be because they are incredibly important. But as for high wages, I think it was Jacob Rees-Mogg said that he would like to see what the effect would be on GDP before he would agree to it. And I do think he actually has a point. You aren't looking to bring over people to earn upwards of £150,000, for example. These are some of the lowest paid workers that you need. And I think that you need to be very careful that you don't push workers' rights further down in the hope that you're going to get cheap labour.
Yeah, but people's value is not necessarily in the money that they make. We rely on all sorts of people that don't make a lot of money, but without whom the country wouldn't go round, like the care people that you just mentioned, the HGV drivers, nurses, people in the farming industry. It's all the sort of little, some might think, I'm sure Jacob Rees-Mogg thinks, insignificant people that don't actually create profit in themselves, but without whom this country wouldn't be able to function properly.
And I don't disagree with you on that, but if the Prime Minister is setting this out as it is going to grow the economy, then you have to put down the parameters of what it's going to do. I don't disagree at all with what you've just said. We do rely on these people. We desperately need them. But you can't just keep relying upon the immigration system to fill these holes. You've got to decide what you're doing with your own workforce. Are all the jobs being advertised? Are people looking for work? All of those other things before just relying on EU workers predominantly to come over and fill those spaces. And what are you going to do with the visa system? How easy are you going to make it? How expensive is it going to be for somebody to apply? Because if they've got to spend £470, for example, on the immigration health surcharge to come and earn £20,000 maybe doing a job in this country, are they going to want to do that?
The problem with saying that, we'd prefer that we had British people filling these jobs is twofold, really. One, we don't have a large pool of unemployed British people in this country. Employment is at a record high. And the second is that all of these jobs are empty because we don't want to do them.
Well, I mean, that's got to be a conversation for the country, the DWP, the Prime Minister. You can't just rely on the immigration system. I do think that we needed to have sorted out seasonal agricultural workers, healthcare workers coming from other countries to fill those positions. But here we are in 2022 when the Brexit vote went through in 2016 and we are in a real mess. So you have to weigh up what Brexit means to you, what Brexit means to the country, and what you actually need to keep the country running. And this is a really difficult balancing act, and it's going to divide the country, I think, even further.
Do you think that people were lied to, essentially, made fearful of the other, and they voted Brexit because they thought that the people that had moved in next door and don't speak English or didn't come from round their way, they would leave and they wouldn't come back, and we would be able to cope without them, thank you very much, because we would be able to do those jobs. That was the way that Brexit was sold. The people that were telling us that surely knew, hopefully, that was not true. If they didn't know that, then we're probably in more trouble than we realise.
Whether they knew it or not, I think that immigration was never discussed sensibly during the Brexit debates. Now, I say that as a Brexiteer, and I will hold my hands up to that, but that wasn't my issue. Brexit wasn't an immigration issue for me. But for a lot of people it was, and they were unhappy at what they considered for people coming over and taking jobs away from the internal workforce. I think that it was never discussed properly. I think the implications of stopping free movement were never discussed. It was used as a bit of a red meat issue. And it just was that dividing line of people going, enough, we don't need any more people here, and those saying, please keep coming over. You're never going to get a consensus on this. Brexit meant different things to different people. And because we could never have a sensible argument about immigration, this is where we are now.
There was a poll done recently that I don't actually have it in front of me, but it's off the top of my head. It said, do you think that immigration has been positive for the country? And the overwhelming majority of people said that it had been. So has people's attitude changed since Brexit, or did they just poll different people?
I think it really depends which area you live in and who you're exposed to. If you have quite a diverse community, you've seen people come over from different countries, integrate, work, and become your neighbours, then I think you'll have a more positive view of immigration than perhaps if you're in an area where the communities are more split and more separate. So I think it's one of those questions that it will depend when you ask it, who you ask, and where you're from.
It is curious, isn't it, that the areas in which the Brexit vote was strongest are almost all areas in which the foreign population is the smallest. So it really was playing on people's fear of the outsiders who hadn't actually arrived in their area yet.
And that's what I mean about this. If you've never been exposed to those kind of communities, you are going to have a view that is going to be different. I think people need to look at what benefits these people have brought in. And when you see Syrian doctors, for example, who have come over fleeing a war zone, are in the NHS being consultants or setting up businesses in local areas, then your view of them will change. I think people need to just expose themselves a little bit more to what the benefits of immigration are. But that goes back to having a proper conversation about it without falling into that trap of just coming down one side or the other.
Well, if Liz Truss gets her way, then people are about to be exposed to people from abroad who are desperately needed here to do these jobs that are currently being undone. How do you think those people who voted for Brexit, thinking that they were going to see the back of foreigners, how do you think they're going to feel about that?
I think they're going to be very angry. They're going to feel very betrayed, and in some areas looking like they wouldn't be Conservative again because they're not delivering the Brexit that was promised. I think that is the really harsh reality of it on a political term, that we are now in danger as a party of losing a lot of the votes that we gained in 2019.
A cynic might think that it was kind of the plan all along to tell people that one thing was going to happen while knowing that we couldn't get by if we fulfilled that promise of fewer foreigners coming over here and doing our jobs, and that the idea all along was to let that die down, win the vote on Brexit. That was the most important thing. And then after that, well, all of the promises that they made, well, we can just ignore all that and move on regardless.
Politics is a very, very strange world, and when you look at varying promises over the years, the way they come true is always slightly different than what you're expecting. You don't always get. But unfortunately, this is such a divisive issue, and it has been ever since the referendum, that it is only going to get worse. And I know Liz Truss said that she was quite happy to be unpopular and make unpopular decisions. Well, I think her dream may just have come true. Sorry.
Earlier on, you said that you were all for Brexit. That's not quite the phrase that you used, but that's more or less it. Do you think it's significant that the post for Minister for Finding Brexit Opportunities now no longer exists? Have all the opportunities actually been found, or weren't there any to find in the first place?
I'm not entirely sure it needed an entire minister to have a look at that. It's going to be a decision across businesses and communities. You don't need to quantify it under one person's job. I live in the county of Kent. I see lorries coming up and down, streaming across the channel, and have been caught up in all of the delays. But I would still vote Brexit tomorrow, the same way I did in 2016.
OK, well, I'm curious. Why would you do that?
For me, it was about sovereignty and taking back the decisions being made by European courts and people I hadn't voted for and had no knowledge of my community making decisions on my behalf. That was my main reason. As I say, immigration never really came into it for me. And having worked at the Home Office, my view of immigration is much different to most people's would be.
So if you were still working at the Home Office and you were advising the Immigration Minister, what would you say?
That we need to work on the backlog of cases that we've already got and look at the visa system to see how best it can adapt to the changing needs of the country and not just tack things on because it's convenient.
All right, thanks for that. Thanks, Claire. Claire Pearsall, who is a political commentator and former special advisor to Immigration Minister Caroline Nokes at the Home Office. Bloomsbury. Hello, Sophia.
Good evening. I think the moon
Good evening, who?
Nick.
Bingo!
I completely agree with you. I think the moon is made of green cheese and it's left that way. Now, Boris didn't get his way. Actually, he's called Alexander, so we have to call him Alex in future. But Theresa May had a good idea. She was going to reinstitute the Sizewell B nuclear...
She was going to do what now?
Reinstitute the Sizewell B nuclear power station. If he'd left it alone, Boris has now agreed to it. 3 years later, she would have completed it by now. It may be not my favourite one, but it's better than being told that we can't have any...
absolutely. I couldn't have said it better myself. You know, when you start with the moon is made of green cheese, then anything you say after that, even if it does make sense, doesn't make any sense. That's just a tip that I'm passing on to you with my compliments.
Thank you.
Birmingham. Hello, Zoe. Or is it Zoe?
Hello, how are you doing?
Zoe, hello. Good, thanks.
Hi. Oh, I love your show, by the way.
Thanks.
No, I do love your show. However, I'd just like to say, this whole thing with Harry and Meghan, I can't believe who are their PR agency and who are the marketing agency. What are they doing? Seriously?
Well, they seem to be doing a pretty good job because they're on the front page of the newspapers almost every day. Despite everything that we're living through, they still are top of the news.
Yeah, you can be top of the news, but look at the ratings. Like, look at their, level. Do you know what I mean? It's like, what is going on?
Well, if you do look at their ratings, they're doing fantastically well. I mean, she just released a podcast that apparently was #1 in the podcast list, which is a very hard thing to achieve. I mean, the chap, I'm unfamiliar with his work, but I know his name. He's called Joe Rogan, and his podcasts are downloaded millions of times. Now, to beat him, even if it was on your first go, that's pretty good going. So I think if we're going to hand out brickbats, then I don't think their PR department is deserving of receiving one. Blackheath, hello, Joanne.
Hello, Nick.
Joanne.
Hello, I'm very pleased that you're back on. I missed you a lot last week.
Appreciate it, Joanne.
Thank you.
So I phoned to talk about paying tax.
Tax?
Yes. The little people, not leprechauns, paying tax.
Right.
So I had a letter this week from HMRC.
Stop. From where?
From HMRC.
No.
What should it be?
HMRC.
HMRC.
No. HMRC.
Yes.
Say it.
HMRC.
No.
No. HMRC.
HMRC.
No. I'm not going to get past this, Joanne. We have to get this right before we proceed. It's
okay.
Listen to me now, very carefully.
Okay.
HMRC. Now you.
HMRC.
No. I'll say it again. HMRC. Now you.
HMRC. What are you doing to me, Nick?
No, Joanne. I'll give it one more go. Listen very carefully.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yes.
HMRC. Now you.
HMRC.
By Jove, I think she's got it. Hampton. Hello, Michael.
Yes, but these people, good evening, these people aren't going to come here and work for £9.50 an hour and have nowhere to live in London and the South East because of the communications now. Everybody, they know what's going on around the world, and they'd be very foolish to come here and live tend to a room somewhere. So they aren't going to do it. It's a requirement of the government because the lady says she wants them. It doesn't mean to say they're all going to turn up.
Well, quite. So it does appear as though just when you thought Brexit couldn't get any worse, it just has.
Well, I don't recall before CV19 that we had this problem. Did they all left and went back, not coming back anymore because of the COVID problem? Because I don't recall a few years ago that this was a raging issue.
Well, it wasn't a raging issue until people made it such because they wanted us to vote to leave the European Union. I mean, people, if you asked before all of this mess started, what are people's main concerns, they would have said what they all have said. They've said the police and the NHS and the local council isn't picking up the rubbish and all of that stuff. And then, suddenly, as a nation, we became transfixed with the idea of sovereignty and taking back control.
Well, I think a lot of the MPs I heard, they said that the main thing on the doorsteps when people were asked why they want to vote Brexit, they all said immigration. We're an overpopulated country. We can't afford to absorb millions of people from around the world again, or either from the EU.
Right.
Open doors.
Yes, well, quite. But people have been saying that we're full for pretty much ever since this country existed.
Well, we seem to be right. It seems to be approaching that now because, as your callers have said in the past, I mean, who's going to come and work here with any intelligence that you need? You need some intelligence to do the jobs. I mean, they may not be high-profile doctors and nurses and scientists, but they have to be reasonably intelligent for £9.50 an hour and have nowhere to live because they won't be afford.
Well, quite. Yeah. Well, I agree with you, but they used to be here doing those jobs. But now they are here no more. And this is exercising Liz Truss, whose mantra is growth. And we can't grow if we've got 2 million jobs that are not being done in this country. Because otherwise, we'll just be kissing goodbye to our major industries, our major engines of growth. Bermondsey, Lavinia Grace.
Hiya. Hi, Nick. How are you?
I am great, mate.
Lovely, lovely. Lovely to hear your voice.
Is it?
It really is. Yes, it really is. Well, what I'd like to say, Nick, is all I've been hearing is all about this energy sort of crisis, sort of food sort of crisis.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is a crisis.
Yeah.
But what I want to say to you and all your people out there,
all of me, all of my person.
Yes.
Yeah.
To understand actually what is going on, because I feel in my heart everything is absolutely crazy out there. So, to understand everything, you have to be sort of crazy to understand everything. Does that make sense?
No.
Right, exactly. Because nothing makes sense.
Nothing makes sense anymore.
Affirmative.
Yeah, you are completely correct in every respect.
Thank you, Nick. But what I would like to say...
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
What I would love to say, Nick, is
Yes.
that I've been, sort of preparing myself. And the reason why I've been...
Now, wait a minute, back up. Preparing yourself in what does that actually involve?
Sort of going back to basics.
Back to basics. And what does that involve?
That means getting yourself dirty.
Oh, please.
Disgusting.
Dirty?
Yes. What I'm actually trying to say, to understand what is going on out there, you have to go back to basics.
Back to basics.
Right?
Yeah. Get dirty. Mm-hmm.
Yes. they get dirty and what's the word? Live in think like you know, you've got to use your brain instead of using the computers, because in a minute, Nick, we will have sort of power cuts, right? So what we need to do is you prepare ourselves and just start sort of thinking with our minds.
As opposed to...
As what?
You want us to think with our minds?
Yes, because so far, everybody is on the computer. And what happens, Nick, when all of us are going to have sort of power cuts here and there and everywhere,
right.
we're not none of us will be able to think.
Right, when the computer gets turned off and you can't charge your phone anymore, can you imagine? Anybody under the age of 40 years old isn't going to be able to think for themselves. I get what you're saying, Lavinia. You're not as crazy as you sound.
Thank you, my lovely.
That's the answer I was hoping for. Good to talk to you, Lavinia Grace. Bromley. Hello, John.
Yes, hello.
John.
Hello, Darren.
Darren's not here, John. I'll call you back as soon as he arrives. All right. I don't know. I'm just getting a feeling about that one.
Warning.
How about you? I'm going to go with my gut instinct. It's just the way he answered the phone. Hello? Are you there? I'm going to say no. And furthermore...
No.
No, it's a no from me. Harrow, Jonathan.
Nick.
Jonathan.
This is now having such a psychological effect on the peoples. I woke up this morning, and I want to talk about the quasi-laughing in a second, but I woke up this morning, and James O'Brien talked all about this economy. I woke up actually at the exact moment that Quasi was doing the speech, you say.
Mm-hmm.
And James O'Brien also, he called you the Don.
Who did?
James O'Brien. He said you're the Don of broadcasting.
No, he didn't.
No, he did. He said it. He tweeted it, but he said this morning, because someone called him up and they said, could you do a bell sound effect each time Quasi says the pound? And he went, I'll leave that to Nick Abbott. He's the Don.
Well, if only I had such a sound effect.
But listen, I was today actually looking for the aeroplane tickets of any other countries to go to.
I'd like the first ticket to anywhere, please.
I'm being very serious with you. The problem is this country now is controlled opposition. Nobody has asked the Quasi-Quatangs nothing about why he was doing the laughings.
I find that astonishing, don't you? Because Twitter was ablaze with people curious about what it was that man was finding so funny at the Queen's funeral.
No, but there are other questions that in this country we can't speak about on the radio because it's controlled opposition. That's why people did not want Jeremy Corbyn or Princess Diana in the power, because they are rebels. And this country is about, on the one hand, all the social media is a wokey-cokey, can't say this, do this. And
wokey-cokey. I'm going to use that.
It's true.
That's funny.
It drives you the mad. You go on any social media site and it just gives you a headache. But on the other hand, the country is being ground to a halt. And can I just quickly say this? I don't want to be rude or offend the listeners.
Uh-oh.
But I look at Liz Truss and I think it's an idiot. You know?
I look at Liz Truss and I wonder who's telling her to say all this stuff. I just don't believe that she's coming out with this stuff herself. I think that we're not actually being... we're not even being run by the Conservative Party anymore. I think we're being run by the European Research Group. That bunch of far right-wing... I don't know. Let's call them the far right-wing dingalings. A different kind of dingaling to the ones they got in America. I'm not saying that, they've all got wooden teeth and play banjos. But the stuff that they believe in is just it's just off the scale berserk. No one voted for them. No one voted for them at all. I don't believe that we would vote for a group of people that are so astonishingly right-wing. Here's their credo in a nutshell. The strongest wins. The winner takes it all. And the reason that they say that is because they've already won. That is pretty much the end of their the belief system. We've won, you've lost, and we want to cement that position in place. What's astonishing is that people continue to support that direction of travel, who will never benefit from it. That's the thing. That's the key thing. People support it who will never, ever, ever, ever benefit from it. But you can't tell people that they're being had because it's too much loss of face. So they'll just dig their heels in. And that's where this wokey-cokey, the wokey-cokey comes in. And that's what they're going to run the next election campaign on. They're going to be doing the wokey-cokey.
Okie dokie.
Wokey-cokey. Leicester. Hello, Chris. Chris.
Hello.
Yes, Chris.
Hello?
Yes, Chris. Let me say it one more time.
Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about the energy crisis, actually.
Okay, actually.
People, this is just a prediction, by the way. There's going to be secured energy loans on people's properties within the next 6 months.
Secured energy loans on people's properties? What, you mean that, that you can have electricity, but we've got to take a chunk of your house?
Yes, the UK government will nationalise all the energy companies, and then they will place a second charge by the land registry on your property. And this is part of the communist agenda.
The communist agenda?
Yeah.
Right. And you thought this up all by yourself?
Yes, I did actually, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, good work, Chris. As soon as you have another thought, I want you to let me know straight away. Promise me you'll do that. You're a communist, Boris.
Yeah. Wait a minute.
I had no idea. Brighton. Hello, Simon.
Hello, Nick. How are you?
Good, thanks.
I just want to say, Nick, I think Liz Truss is going to be the best Prime Minister that we've had since Margaret Thatcher.
The best Prime Minister we've had since Margaret Thatcher?
Yeah.
What makes you say that?
I think with her, the new budget they just released is fantastic. For
Fantastic?
working
What,
families.
like science fiction, you mean?
No. For working families, cutting national insurance, cutting tax. I just wanted to say that we need to have a little bit more personal responsibility in our lives.
What does that mean?
My husband and I were in Brighton. My niece came down with her husband a few days ago, and they want to go to McDonald's. We don't eat at McDonald's. A family in front of us, a man, a woman, and their 2 young children. They ordered Big Mac meals, blah, blah, blah. The bill came to £32.
Right, excellent value for money. What's that got to do with personal responsibility?
What I'm going to say is about the economic crisis and cost of living crisis. My husband, Michael, and I, we've adopted two 14-year-old twins. We spent...
But what's this got to do with? I actually can't be bothered. I should have gone with my gut instinct right from the beginning. Warning! You know, always go with your gut instinct. More fool me. But anyway, thanks a lot, Simon, for whatever that was. The new health secretary, she's the health secretary. Can you believe that?
No.
The new health secretary has told healthcare workers to be positive as they grapple with job cuts and a deepening cost of living crisis. Just think positive thoughts, says Therese Coffey. The new health secretary is Therese Coffey, who was appointed by Prime Minister Liz Truss this month, because when people think health, they think Therese Coffey. Cigar-chomping bon viveur Therese Coughing issued the guidance to hundreds of health staff in an email last Thursday. The guidance says, cheer up, it might never Oh no, that's right, it already has. Staff were told to avoid using Oxford commas because that's the most important thing that's facing the NHS at the moment. The contested punctuation mark that precedes the last item on a written list. She started with the big stuff. And to think that people wondered why coughing had been given the job. She knows how to prioritise. Coughing's guidance angered health workers, many of whom were on the front lines during the COVID pandemic and who now face real terms pay cuts. And the added pressures as infection rates are expected to rise over winter. But they got a clap on a few Thursdays for a couple of minutes. What more do they want? Coughing instructed employees to be precise and be positive. If you've done something good, let's say so and avoid double negatives, she said. Or coughing will see you after class. Said one person with knowledge of the mood at the UK Health Security Agency. The email was super patronising. It does make you consider if you're in the right place when a new minister comes in with this, they said. The idea that they'll have to frame issues positively indicates a person who doesn't want to deal with the problem, so that's not encouraging, they said. Or, as Liz the Brains Trust would say,
we have never had it so good.
That email caused particular frustration among staff at UKHSA, the Health Security Agency, which was born out of Public Health England last year and has been the main agency in charge of dealing with outbreaks, including COVID-19 and monkeypox and polio. Their workers said they were demoralised after the government earlier this year made substantial job cuts to fixed-term staff who were involved in the outbreak during the pandemic. According to people with knowledge of the matter, they've been warned internally that job cuts of up to 70% in some departments could seriously hinder its response to outbreaks. These are the people that respond to outbreaks, pandemics, and they're going to fire them. The COVID pandemic is not over. We've got monkeypox and polio and all sorts of things that are popping up all over the globe, each one of which could be the next big thing. Epidemiologists have predicted we're entering the age of the pandemic, and this government is actually closing the agency that deals with that. I mean, at some point you have to wonder, are they actually trying to kill us? Or the poor ones of us anyway? Staff at that agency have been offered a one-off £350 payment in recognition of, quotes, extraordinary efforts.
Oh, fabulous.
Wow. And in the very same breath, they're lifting the cap on bonuses for bankers. But the people who brought us through the COVID pandemic get £350 and are expected to say thank you for it. In recognition of the extraordinary efforts of the past couple of years. As according to documents seen by the Financial Times, some permanent staff at the Health Protection Agency have been offered a 2.5% pay increase to help manage the cost of living, according to insiders. They said we're actually getting a salary cut. UK inflation is expected to hover around the low double digits. They're getting 2.5%. After everything we've done to respond to the COVID pandemic, including extensive overtime working, including bank holidays, we're getting pay increases that are way below current inflation rates. You're getting a 10% pay cut for everything you've done. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anything else? The government, of course, said we value enormously all of the hard-working colleagues who work tirelessly to make our nation's health secure and blah, blah, blah. You know, if only health workers were billionaires, or ran a hedge fund, or owned a bank, or had Russian connections, then maybe they could have stumped up enough money to the Conservative Party to actually get some policy to go their way. But they failed to do any of those simple things, so they get nothing. Which, I'd have to say...
That is a disgrace.
I can't believe I'm about to say this, but I agree with Liz Truss. The Oxford comma. I mean, to have actually come out with that... I mean, do you even know what an Oxford comma is? It's the last... it's the second from last thing in a list before the word and. Like, if our cars come in red, yellow, brown and blue, it would be red, comma, yellow, comma, brown, comma, and that comma is the Oxford comma, and blue. But it's there for a purpose. Because if I said that our cars come in red, yellow, brown and blue, then that implies you've got 3 colours, or 3 types. One's red, one's yellow, and one's brown and blue. The Oxford comma is there for a purpose, because it tells you there's actually 4 colours, not 2 colours, and there's some sort of hybrid, hideous mess that's brown and blue. Anybody want a brown and blue car?
No.
Didn't think so. Can I interest you in red and yellow? No. The Oxford comma. They're just doing it to get a rise out of us. That can be the only explanation. They can't be that bad at their job. It must be deliberate. That's the first thing the new health secretary said. Don't use double negatives and drop the Oxford comma. What's happening to this country? I mean, seriously, that is a question I'd like to know the answer to. Apart from a vast transfer of wealth from the poor to the rich, what is happening to this country? I think they distract us with dinghies and, you know, people coming over here and nicking our biscuits. But then they just have to make, like, random people angry for no apparent reason, just to keep our mind off what's actually happening here. The Oxford comma. God. But apart from that, how's the country going?
Oh, fabulous.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Let's have Bloomsbury, Sophia.
Good evening, Nick.
Sophia.
I'm glad to hear you are well. Oh, you were last night when I was listening.
Yeah.
I hope it's still the same.
Well,
because
I don't know. The way I'm listening to my voice at the moment, I seem a bit nasally, like I've caught something.
Well, we've both been the benefit of Glaswegian climate. Maybe that's had a lot to do with it.
There's been a lot of rain lately, no doubt about that.
Always, yes.
Not always. Lately.
Frequently.
Just lately. Very, very infrequently, actually, yes, Sophia. So you got that wrong, but just lately.
Yeah, I agree, lately. I just think it's a pity that Lizzie and her late husband never got the benefit of the telegram for getting to be over 100.
100?
Yeah.
Right.
My grandma got it 102.
Wow.
So, and
that would have been a bit bizarre to receive a telegram from... Is there such a thing as a telegram anymore?
Exactly. That's another point, I dare say. Anyway, I just want to say... my middle name is Olive, which you arrange the letters of, and you get I love. And people say, if you rearrange the letters of Tony Blair, you get he be liar. I just want to say, it's a pity that the music has deteriorated since before.
Since before when?
The coronation.
Music has deteriorated since before the coronation?
Well, that's within my mandate. And in 1952, there was I Believe by Frankie Lane, and I was playing it on the piano from the sheet music. And since then, it's always been about I love you all the time. And I've got that sewed up for my own mandate.
Well, you are making a lot of sense, Sophia.
Yes, that's it. And a lot of music. I didn't bring the harmonica with me this time. It was going to be...
that is unfortunate, because if you had got the harmonica with you, then I would have asked you to put it away and not bother us with it. So,
well, then I wouldn't have lost it anyway.
Fortunately, yeah.
These days I'm on the guitar. But,
well, if that's what they're calling the medicine you're being prescribed, then that's just fine. Thanks a lot, Sophia. She's on the guitar, whatever that means. I'm on about 3 guitars a day now, man. But I can handle it. I'm just feeling a bit woozy at the moment, that's all. Beckenham. Hello, Stanley.
Oh, hello. Oh, Mr. Nick Abbott. Is that you, sir? Oh,
Stanley.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you. I've called a couple of times. You told me off for being a listener with material, so I'm starting to learn the ropes. Didn't intend to. Now, Liz Truss's budget. Now, it's her and the Chancellor of the Exchequer. It's been done between them. The way I see it is this. Liz Truss has sat down to play poker with 24 other countries. She's got 3 cards in front of her. She's picked them up. She's got a 2, a 3, and a 5 of 3 different suits. Now, she has decided, when she puts back down on the table, she's decided to go all in. with all the money in the Treasury and all the money she can borrow, she's gone all in on a big bluff. Two things she's overlooked. First, she's the only person so far to put any money on the table. And the second thing is, if she looks at the table, she's put her cards down face up. The rest of the world knows she's bluffing. She's looking for investment in Britain, fine. But this is not the right way to go about it.
Okay, that was way too confusing, Stanley. You sort of lost me, and I was thinking about what colour the table, the baize on the table is. I think you need to maybe simplify your argument a little bit there, Stanley. But good effort. Did anybody understand that?
No,
not really. It's more like the government has got its last 10p. And it's decided to just put it in one-armed bandit and to hell with it. Let's talk about this with Professor Gwydion Prinz. Professor Prinz is a former advisor to NATO and a member of the Chief of Defence's Strategy Advisory Panel. Professor, so what were your thoughts then when you heard about the large increase in the defence budget?
Well, just a small correction. The Strategy Advisory Panel no longer exists, but I was when it did. My thoughts are about time too, because it's not triggered simply by Putin's war in Ukraine. We've had a very, very long period, as the Secretary of State for Defence pointed out, really 40 years, in which the armed forces have been living with a situation where they have been dominated by Treasury demands, where they've been told to meet certain percentages in budgets, and where sometimes they've been told that they're being given uplift, which is actually not an uplift at all. It's simply a so-called efficiency gain. And this doesn't work in the real world, because the defence budget of a democracy is the only budget which is not under the control of any British minister, including the Prime Minister. The size of the defence budget is under the control of our putative enemies. And not just Mr. Putin, but the other ones that we face in the world.
Oh, well, who are you thinking of?
Well, clearly the Chinese. You know, we are involved in a grey war. I think people won't be living in my lifetime in a period where people declare formal wars. But we're clearly in a conflict. Mr. Putin has said as much with him. But we are equally so in a strategic competition with Xi Jinping and his ambitions for China, his China dream for the centenary of the Communist Party coming to power in 2049, in which he intends to become the dominant world power and hence to control the terms of the world system. That's a fundamental challenge to us, to our values, to our way of life. And up until now, we've really not been taking this seriously in the round. We thought that it was something that could be dealt with diplomatically or in terms of trade policy, but it has a clear strategic, military and intelligence dimension. And what's interesting in what Mr. Wallace said in his long interview today is that he at least is clearly seized of the fact that new investment is not going to be what old and bold soldiers might want. It's not going to be, can we restore this or that badge of the Lonesome Regiment? It's going to be investing in new combinations of weapons, new ways of operating. He uses a couple of examples of modern artillery operating jointly with drones, for example. But I would point to what I think is the largest single problem that we have in our defence line of battle, which is with the Royal Navy, which is both too small and also has suffered over the last 35, 40 years serially from the, frankly, appalling mistakes in procurement, engineering that have led to weaknesses in the engineering of complex systems.
Yes, the number of the amounts of kit that has been ordered, both big and small, that has either failed to turn up or has been, decades late and massively overspending, is it's almost too much to list in a brief 3-hour show. The MOD isn't very good at organising itself.
I'm afraid that's true. And in the time when I was active in an advisory capacity, and indeed when I was working with the Defence Research Agency, this was a repeated refrain, because what happens is that somehow or another you have a requirement, a lean requirement to produce a particular capability, which then it gets gold-plated in all sorts of ways. All sorts of Spanish practices occur inside the industry. Costs go out of control. And you find yourself with a much, much smaller number of whatever it was that you thought you were going to buy. This is particularly true of warships. And you know, this is no longer acceptable in the sort of world that we're now in, because we lived through this period after the collapse of the Soviet Union, in which there was a general view that we could take a so-called peace dividend. And to a degree, of course, that was true, because nobody wants to spend more on defence than you have to. But as well as the size of the defence budget being fundamentally controlled by the nature of the challenge that we face, that is to say, our enemies, the other thing about it is a moral point, really, which is that it is the first charge on the Treasury. It's the first charge on our taxes, because the defence of citizens from the enemy without and the enemy within, which involves the state being given the monopoly of violence, that is the first thing which money from tax should be spent on. Now, we are way away from an era in which we think that. We have thought that all sorts of nice-to-have things, largely associated with the welfare state, are somehow more important than defence. Well, we're now back in the world of the reality, which is that if you have not secured the state and secured the citizens, then all these nice-to-have things are as of naught. It's a harsh truth and an old one, but it's a truth.
Some people might think, well, why has it got to be us? What have we got to do with it? We're essentially an offshore tax avoidance racket near the coast of Europe. Why do we have to save the world?
A tax avoidance racket? Really, you don't mean that. Look, we are the world's fifth largest economy. We are the major military power in Europe. We are, and Her Majesty's funeral, I think, was a recent demonstration of this. We are in many ways the world's premier exponent of so-called soft power. On many calculations of geopolitical influence, we are the second or third most influential state on the planet. And this isn't new. We've had that sort of position for at least the last 300 years. What is new is that we've had a ruling class, particularly in the last 20 or so years, but not just. I mean, really since Suez, I would say, since 1956, which has persuaded itself that Britain is in decline, in a sense that we ought to be in decline. You know, there's a sort of, we ought to be atoning for past sins, in their view. And neither of those things were actually true, in my view. But what Mr. Putin has done is to put a very firm stop, I think, to the luxury of that sort of self-flagellation. And I think that's one of the other things that you'll see signalled in Mr. Wallace's interview.
Well, I mean, I guess your answer does illustrate or underlines my question. Why do we have to be the preeminent military power in Europe? I mean, just because we used to do that over the last 300 years, why do we have to keep doing the same thing over and over?
Because it's in, look, it's a very straightforward answer, because it's in our interests to be that preeminent power, because it's in our national security interest, and the national security interest is the first duty of the state.
Well, you know, fingers crossed that it doesn't come to it, but Vladimir Putin is threatening two countries, Ukraine and us. So we are rather putting ourselves in the crosshairs.
No, I don't think that that's true. I think that Mr. Putin's threats are pretty promiscuous. He's already illegally invaded Ukraine in a barbaric war. We have, under our previous Prime Minister, taken the lead, and I think we have a great deal to be proud of in that regard. because without the United Kingdom's intervention, and Mr. Wallace played a crucial role in this, in February, with the provision of the now famous N-Law, the new generation Manpack anti-tank weapons, I think it's widely accepted in the strategy community that Ukrainians could well have lost in day 3 or 4 to the Blitzkrieg, but they didn't. And so we played an important role, and hardly surprisingly, Mr. Putin finds that disobliging. But that is no reason for us not to have done it, and it's certainly no reason for us not to continue to give the lead, which we have given, to the whole of Europe, and indeed to the wider free world, because we have been consistent at a time when the President of the United States has on occasion gone wobbly, as Mrs. Thatcher would have said, and we now have a European political class which is, frankly, split open like a rotten melon, because on the one side you have the position which we have taken consistently, which I believe personally to be the correct one, which is to recognize that the Ukrainian resistance to Mr. Putin is not just about Ukraine, not just about Ukrainian independence, but it's a wider issue. It goes back to the things we were saying a little earlier about the nature of the grey wars that we are in. But also, by that same token, we are in a situation where the French, particularly under Mr. Macron, and to a certain extent the Germans, are promoting policies of appeasement towards Mr. Putin, or have been doing. They've been, frankly, wobbling all over the place. And it has required us to provide a very clear, quiet, firm hand, and not only words, but actions, because actions speak as loud as, if not louder than words. And we've provided all of those, and Mr. Wallace has been at the very centre of it, and I think all power to him.
Well, I mean, we could talk about the government's relationship with Russia and its reliance on the money from that country, but it's pointless going down that road. But I do wonder...
I mean, hang on. Of course we can. And I think that there are serious mistakes that were made, and they were made by governments of all political persuasions. They persuaded themselves...
Particularly here. I mean, London is called the Russian laundromat. No other country in Europe had that name tagged onto it.
Well, we went through a period, particularly during the Cameron coalition period, where the view was that...
I think Boris Johnson was pretty close to the Russians.
I have no knowledge of that.
Well, it's not a secret. I mean, if you want to play a set of tennis with Boris Johnson, you've got to pay in rubles. I mean, I exaggerate to make a point, but I guess I come back.
I think you do, and actually, let's not mix apples and pears. I think that the attempt to, the Mr. Mandelson community on to Mr. Osborne and those who were looking actively to entice and welcome oligarchic money into London. I think that's not an exaggeration.
Well, you must include Boris Johnson. You must include Boris Johnson in that list. Of course, you must. But anyway, my initial question I'll restate it. Why us? Why not Germany? I mean, you mentioned Germany. You mentioned France. I mean, they are richer than we are. Why not Spain? Why not Belgium? Why has it got to be us? It does seem to be like harking back to this notion of empire when we ruled the world, but we don't do that anymore.
No, I don't think that. I mean, actually, it's a bit of a smuggled assumption, which I would not accept in the question in the way that you put it. But, for several reasons, it is us. One, as I've already told you, is that it's in our own interests, our national security interests.
Well, as long as Vladimir Putin doesn't target London, it's in our interest. It's in our interest up until the point when it isn't. This sort of belligerent attitude can let you win or lose.
No, but we're not being belligerent. Our position has been
Putin
quite calm.
Thinks we are.
Well, Mr. Putin thinks everybody's being belligerent. He lives through the looking glass. You know this. Everything that he says we do is what he actually does. You know, he's in his most recent desperate speech, faced with this extraordinarily successful summer offensive by the Ukrainians. He accuses us He accuses Liz Truss, of nuclear blackmailing the Russians, whereas, of course, it's him who has been continuously talking about these sorts of things.
Right.
So, no, I think that here I do support the line the Foreign Office has taken, by and large, and the MOD, which is that you just have to have a very cool head when you're dealing with this sort of thing. Mr. Putin knows perfectly well, as George Robertson, the former Labour defence minister who then became a very successful Secretary-General of NATO, as I'm sure you know, he said quite correctly a few days ago, Mr. Putin knows precisely what would happen.
Well,
that is to say, if he used nuclear weapons in any form or whatsoever, there would be major responses. What he doesn't know is what the response would be. And, of course, he shouldn't know because that's the nature of deterrence.
Well, quite. But, I mean, whether he's actually sane or not will depend on the outcome of that. But let's just talk about, finally, just the amount of money that has been suggested. Because it wasn't just a couple of years ago that Boris Johnson said the Ministry of Defence can have an extra 16.5 billion, not million, billion pounds. And the result of that was that it just disappeared into a hole to plug the financial gaps across the MOD's programmes. Now, the MOD has, as we've already said, a history of being utterly incompetent when it comes to procurement. So what guarantee would we have if this extra £52 billion was magicked out of the air, that that wouldn't just disappear as well?
Well, we have no guarantee, but we have considerable reassurance in the reason why we're having this conversation, which is that we have got at the moment, I think, a very competent and well-informed Secretary of State from Defence who knows the defence sector from the inside. He was a Scots Guards officer himself. He knows where the skeletons are buried, and he is bringing around him a team inside the MOD. There have been important changes in the national security council structure, which I think will give a much, much tighter control over the way in which money is spent on procurement. But I absolutely agree with you, and it's something I've argued for decades, that we have got to get away from the role of these civil servants, procurement people who settle across the defence budget like a swarm of fruit flies. And, you know, we need to get back to a situation in which capability is determined by the professionals, and the professionals wear uniforms, and the defence civil servants, and this is how it used to be, by the way, in the interwar period, and before, they are civil servants. The clue is in the word. They serve, and their job is then to ensure the execution. So, just to give you a practical example, one of the things which I think should be greatly regretted is that the Royal Corps of Naval Constructors, which was a very noble body, was dissolved away and somehow absorbed into one of this sort of blobocracy of the procurement world. It would be really very good to have that sort of body, which used to be based in at Fox Hill in Bath, to have it reconstituted so that there are people who are professional naval architects and naval engineers who are actively overseeing these complex programs, and that it is not put out to a sort of quasi-commercial bidding process, which sometimes works. I mean, it did work, for example, with the aircraft carrier Alliance in constructing the hulls and so on. But it hasn't worked, manifestly, in many other programs. It has worked, for example, with NLAW, which we already mentioned, which was a collaboration between the British and the Swedes, with a factory in Belfast. We need to have consistent value for money, not, as it were, accidental value for money. And I'm sure that we're going to get it. Read what Wallace said. He knows that he's being given a once-in-a-lifetime chance, and I think if I had to put my money on anybody who would deliver, then I think it would be Ben Wallace.
All right, thanks, Gwydion. Gwydion Prinz, former advisor to NATO and a former member of the Chief of the Defence Staff's Strategy Advisory Panel. Archway, Tina.
Hi, Nick. I'm just really so angry. The grey elite of the West is so nasty, and they're taking all their masks off. That is mind-boggling. You don't want a confrontation and this immense amount of the money to be spent not on the people, like ordinary people of the West. Just leave our ancestral homes alone. It is Africa, Asia, Latin America, former Soviet states. Leave us alone. We will give you, not share, we will sell you our resources, but it's going to be on the equal rights. It's not going to be just as the way you past particular 30, 40 years were taken from us. With Africa, it is an even longer story. With Asia, it is a longer story. And this coming to the end, that's why the snakes of the West is just trying to bite. But you know what? The time is coming to the end. And it is a terrible tragedy because I live in the West and I do love the ordinary people, your true culture and etc. But this war machine that been waging the wars in Middle East, in some other countries, we had enough, really had enough of you. The greed is just mind-boggling. Enough, leave us alone.
Right, but when you say us, who are you talking about?
Well, I'm from Azerbaijan, Caucasus. We had a Nazi policy coming to Armenia, and guess what? We have got a Nagorno-Karabakh issue again flared up. A lot of people from the both sides dying. We have got Russia, Ukraine. You want to surround Russia and rip her off in the pieces. Siberia has got the majority of the resources and wealth. You're not going to have it. Guess what? We will fight for it.
But do you actually think that what's going on in Ukraine is the West's fault?
Yes.
Why do you think that?
It is a proxy war that you flared up. You found a Bandera fascist like Dashnaks that have been cultivated by U.S. from the 1970s, the Californian hyenas.
So when our news media is reporting that Vladimir Putin invaded Ukraine, they're not right.
No, he's invaded. Yes, you can use all different language of the diplomacy. Is it a war? Is it a special operation? But the fact is that you were poking Russia, and not only Russia. You want Central Asian resources as well, like a Turkmenistan gas. Trillions of the gas.
We were in Europe. We were getting Russia's resources, but only by dint of buying them. We didn't go in there and take them. We were paying for them.
For the price of the water, you were buying it.
Well, that's up to Russia to put a price on whatever it was that they were selling. We didn't set the price.
The Zionist economical system coming from the America sell for the market price, for the true price.
Right. So in a nutshell, it's the West that's picking on Russia. Okay. Thanks, Tina. Wasn't expecting that.
Long, I felt like smashing my head in a clear glass window, but instead I went out and smashed out